What if, instead of scraping together a down payment for a single duplex, you could acquire 10 rental houses in one single transaction? That is the shortcut to replacing your paycheck years ahead of schedule. Meet Marco Diaz. In less than 4 years, he went from bussing tables and speaking almost no English to owning over 50 rental doors. No silver spoon, no fancy seminars, no creative financing, hacks that only work in theory. He did it by using a specific type of portfolio loan that most investors do not even know exists, offered by smaller community banks. With less than 5% total cash out of pocket across his first 2 major deals, he secured 28 units. His secret? A retiring landlord who did not just sell him properties, but taught him the playbook. The path to scaling your portfolio is often hiding in plain sight, right in your own city. And with it, the door to financial independence swings wide open. Traditional big banks look at your DTI and tax returns with a magnifying glass, often hitting a wall after 4 mortgages. But community banks? They look at the asset's performance. Portfolio loans stay on the bank's own books. They make the rules. This means they can package multiple properties into one note, allowing for higher leverage if the numbers make sense. Compare this to the standard path. Most investors take a decade to reach 10 units by saving for each one individually. Marco skipped that decade by acquiring 28 units in 2 moves. The retiring landlord is your greatest asset. They aren't just selling real estate, they are looking for someone to preserve their legacy and provide a quick, professional exit. Strategies to find them are simple but require consistency. Drive for dollars. Look for properties with deferred maintenance owned by the same entity for 20+ years. When you find them, don't just talk price. Talk about terms. Can you offer a quick close? Can you take it as is? That's where the shortcuts are truly negotiated. Financial independence isn't about the number of doors, it's about the speed of your freedom. Marco's story proves that with the right leverage, the years are negotiable. If you're ready to scale, start by calling your local bank today. What's one neighborhood you're targeting this year? Let us know in the comments. Visit larrybiceland.com for more details. Call to connect today. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. To truly understand Marco's leap from 0 to 50 doors, you have to go back to the very beginning. He arrived in the U.S. from the Dominican Republic on a baseball scholarship, landing in Albany, Georgia, with a vocabulary of maybe 5 English words. He was starting from absolute zero, working hard in restaurants just to get by. But he listened constantly to podcasts, which became his free university and gave him a vision that he could build something. Then, in 2022, he made his first move. He bought a fourplex. Now, this first deal was not a stroke of genius. In fact, Marco admits he had no idea what he was doing. He thought he was buying cash flow, but in reality, he was buying a problem he did not yet understand. He knew nothing about interest rates, the existing tenants, or what needed fixing. He just jumped. The very first thing he had to do was an eviction. That was his baptism by fire. He spent about $20,000 fixing the property up, being there with his wife every weekend, cleaning out units and hauling trash. He called a buddy who knew construction and traded pizza and beer for lessons on how to do the work himself. He didn't know it at the time, but he had accidentally bought a value-add deal. That's sweat equity is what made the numbers work. Back then, the units rented for maybe $450 each. Today, those same units rent for $1,195 each. His all-in cost was about $350,000, and now that single deal pulls in nearly $4,800 a month. It wasn't just a building, it was the foundation of the vision he'd been hearing about in those podcasts. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. That first deal gave Marco a solid foundation, but the big leap didn't happen. until he met someone at the gym. He started going at 5 a.m. just to build a habit. There was an older guy in the sauna, and they would just chat. Eventually, Marco found out this man owned over 150 rental properties. He was a giant in the local market. One day, Marco saw he had a duplex listed for sale. He called him up and said he wanted to buy it. The man laughed and said, "Marco, don't buy one house from me, buy 10. Marco nearly dropped the phone. He said there was no way he could do that. But the man walked him through it. He wanted to sell his portfolio. And he wanted to sell it to someone who would take care of it. The total price for the 10 houses was around $1.4 million. By then, Marco had been saving aggressively from his restaurant jobs. He didn't buy fancy cars or take big vacations. He just hoarded cash. When this deal came, he had the savings for a 20% down payment. He wrote the check and his account went to zero, back to square one. But now he owned 14 units. That first portfolio of 10 was in great shape, fully occupied and well-maintained. But managing 14 units with his wife was a huge learning curve. He was spending money like crazy at first, buying high-end fixtures. He wasn't making any cash flow. Then he learned about landlord-grade materials. Same function, half the price. That is when the business started to click. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. About a year later, the mentor approached Marco with another opportunity. He was ready to sell 18 more properties. 18 houses in one deal. This would take Marco from 14 doors to 32. But there was a problem. Marco had just drained his savings on the first portfolio. How could he possibly finance another $2 million-plus deal? This is where the mentorship paid off. The man sat him down and said, "Marco, you don't need more cash. You have equity." They did appraisals on the 10 houses he had just bought. They had gone up in value. The mentor then introduced him to the bank president at a local community bank, the same bank he had used for years. They discussed a concept called cross-collateralization. This is when a bank uses the equity in one property you own to secure the loan for another. You are essentially pledging assets you already have as the down payment for new ones. It is a tool that big national banks rarely offer, but local community banks, the ones with under a few billion in assets, can be incredibly flexible. The bank let Marco use the equity in those first 10 properties as the down payment for the next 18. He only had to put in about $40,000 of fresh cash. The bulk of the funding came from the equity he already owned. He didn't even know that was possible. The key was that he had bought right the first time. If he had overpaid for the first deal, he wouldn't have had the equity to leverage. He bought at a fair price from a motivated seller, which gave him the fuel for the next fire. If you found this case study helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. What would you do with 32 doors? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching.
Marco's story provides a clear blueprint for scaling a portfolio, especially if you are starting with limited resources. Here are 3 actionable strategies you can apply. First, build relationships with local community banks. Marco talked to a lot of lenders who said no. They thought his plan was too risky. But the community bank that knew him and knew the seller understood the value. Small banks don't just lend on paper, they lend on character. Go in, introduce yourself, and show them your plan. Find the one that wants to see you grow. Second, seek out retiring landlords. They are often more motivated to sell to someone who will take care of their legacy than to get the absolute highest dollar. They can also become your greatest mentors. Don't just look for deals. Look for people with decades of experience who are ready to transition out. A simple conversation at a local real estate meetup or even a coffee shop can lead to a life-changing partnership. And third, understand that it is okay to start messy. Marco didn't wait until he was ready. He jumped in, made mistakes, and learned with his hands dirty. You don't learn until you are in the game. If you wait until you are perfectly prepared, You will never start. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.
So, let's quickly recap the incredible journey we covered today. We started with Marco Diaz, an immigrant who came to the U.S. with almost nothing, working as a waiter. We saw how he bought his first fourplex, a value-add deal that required sweat equity and hard lessons like his first eviction. Then, we explored the game-changing power of mentorship when he met a retiring landlord in a gym sauna. That relationship led to him buying 10 houses at once using his savings. And finally, we learned how he used the equity from that deal through a community bank portfolio loan and cross-collateralization to buy 18 more properties, scaling from 4 doors to over 50 in just 4 years. Marco's story proves that financial freedom is closer than you think, often hiding in plain sight in your own city. Now it's your turn. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button right now. It tells the algorithm that more people need to hear stories like this. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into the strategies that actually work. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.